The federal government announced that a further 300 firearms would be added to the banned guns list. Now, surprisingly, the Alberta government was a little bit silent on the subject. Perhaps it was because the announcement was made on the anniversary of the École Polytechnique massacre in Montreal. Now, to talk about this in more detail is our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent for the National Post, Tyler Dawson, who joins us once again from Edmonton. Tyler, Premier Daniel Smith has talked a big game about gun owners' rights in the past. In fact, the Alberta's right to own guns for many Albertans was included in the new Bill of Rights. So what changed?
Well, I think part of it is almost certainly, as you alluded to, the fact that this announcement came on the anniversary of the École Polytechnique massacre, which was, I think, 35 years ago on December 6th, I believe. So obviously just sort of an awkward day for someone to come out with really strong opposition to it. But, you know, there could be another political imperative here, which is while firearms ownership is important to people in rural and small town Alberta, UCP supporters, party membership, things like that. You know, it's perhaps not quite as big a priority for a lot of the people that the UCP really need to be, you know, keeping in their tent or winning over the next couple of years before the next election. You know, people in big cities, for example, for whom firearm ownership might not be quite so big an issue. But she has talked a big game about it. It wasn't a Sovereignty Act motion, but it was a Sovereignty Act-esque move a couple years ago when the government said that, you know, entities under Alberta's authority, the police, RCMP, for example, would not be participating in any sort of seizures or buybacks. There was, as you mentioned, the inclusion of the right to firearm ownership in the Alberta Bill of Rights. And, you know, during the debate over the Bill of Rights, actually, a good number of MLAs talked about their own relationship with firearms, their own firearm ownership, their use of them in hunting and to protect livestock and things like that. So it's certainly something that this government has talked about a fair bit. And Justice Minister Mickey Amry has said that, you know, that they'll push back where they can and exert what provincial authority they can. But there wasn't any sort of, you know, shouting from the pulpit condemning this move, which maybe you would have expected considering the stance that they've taken over the past few years.
Now, Tyler, the province announced that it would be bringing in no-fault insurance in the hopes that it would lower insurance costs for Albertans by lowering costs for the auto insurance industry. Now, sadly, however, we're not going to see any rates drop until at least 2027. Why is that?
Well, the way the system is set up is that there's going to be the amount of money that an insurance company can increase your premiums by annually right now is capped. And so that cap is going to get a little bit bigger, I think to about 7%. So it means that there will be a jump next year, a bigger jump than there would have been had these rules not changed. And there will be a jump the year after, again, a bigger jump if these rules had not changed. In theory, the idea goes that will sort of give the insurance industry a little bit of time to make some more money, build up, you know, reserves maybe, I don't know. And that's when sort of the no-fault insurance plan would come in, which would limit insurance company payouts, because barring some exceptional circumstances, you wouldn't be able to take the at-fault driver to court, which presumably lowers the payouts that insurance companies are going to have to pay. So there may be some relief in a couple years, but it doesn't seem like there's going to be a reduction in premiums for the next couple years. The reason that sort of matters is because the Alberta government did do a big survey consultation of Albertans, asking them what they thought, what they wanted to see when it came to the insurance industry, when it came to insurance costs. And about, I think 54%, so a small majority, but certainly majority, said their number one priority was bringing down costs. If that's not going to happen over the next couple of years, you might have some hurt feelings going into an election year. Maybe we'll see a massive reduction in insurance costs going into that year. But of course, not everyone's insurance renews on January 1st, right? You know, my insurance renews, I think, in July. So the election will be held before my insurance drops down under that scheme. So a little bit of political risk there, I think, for the UCP. Even if rates come down, it won't be for a couple of years. People might have forgotten. The rates might not come down to what they wanted them to. It's certainly a little bit of a risky plan of attack on the insurance front, I would say.
And you know, it's going to make it much more challenging for drivers under the age of 25, especially if it's going up, and away over the next couple of years. It's going to make it very tough on them. Tyler, as of April Fool's Day, photo radar in the province will mostly be shut down. We'll mainly see it, I believe, in the school zones, playground zones, and construction zones moving forward. Now, government officials say it'll end on provincial highways. Now, you and I have driven up and down Highway 2 many times over the years. I don't think I ever remember a time of seeing photo radar set up along that stretch of highway.
No, I don't either. I called the transportation ministry and said, I've never seen a photo radar truck on Highway 2. What's going on here? And they said that there have actually been tickets issued for photo radar on provincial highways. So I suppose, secondary highways and perhaps some sections of highways that are going through cities and things like that. I'm not entirely certain, but yeah, that caught my eye too. I thought, well, you're eliminating something that doesn't exist, but I guess it does. So maybe we've just missed it in all of the miles we've driven. But they've basically been arguing for a long time that photo radar is a cash cow, that it needs to be eliminated, that it's not reducing, it's not improving traffic safety. It's just a way to, make more money. And there's some truth to that. There's a lot of money that's made across the province from photo radar. And a lot of that money is used by municipalities to fund municipal services, policing often being the big one. And the provincial government actually dips its fingers into that pot too. They changed the rules, I think, in 2021 to give themselves a bigger portion of the photo radar revenue. I think it's up to 40% now. So a bit of a fiscal problem to some extent is going to result from this, I think it's fair to say. Now, what's also interesting about this is by eliminating photo radar, the UCP's put themselves on a bit of a collision course with police forces across the province, which is, usually conservative parties tend to be sort of law and order pro-police parties, and they're at loggerheads, I guess, with police over this, who say that this really does reduce traffic fatalities and traffic accidents, and this is a good, safe policy. So I guess we'll see what the outcome is for traffic around the province. Certainly, there's almost certainly going to be a reduction in revenue, both to municipalities and the province. But I guess we'll see what happens in terms of the safety aspect of it. Now, as you say, it is going to be in playground zones, school zones, and construction zones. And municipalities will be able to apply to the provincial government to allow photo radar on other installations. Perhaps it's a super high-risk intersection, an area where there's lots of speeding, collisions, and things like that. There may be some other locations that are approved, but those are going to be on a case-by-case basis.
Premier Danielle Smith met with the Western governors in Las Vegas recently. She got a little bit of FaceTime with the South Dakota governor, who's Donald Trump's pick for Homeland Security Secretary. Now, Tyler, why was this a big deal for Alberta?
Well, it's a big deal for Alberta because we are really pushing to pitch Alberta energy, frankly, to the incoming U.S. administration, to the governors that might have some sway, to the people who are going to be within the administration who might have some sway on this issue. This is the case right across the country. This is not a sort of a unique to Alberta situation. That the Prime Minister has been, he was in Florida at Mar-a-Lago to have dinner with Trump a week or two ago. There's been lots of discussion. I think actually the premiers are on a call with the Prime Minister today about it. This is a huge, huge issue right across Canada. I mean, a 25% tariff, which Trump is promising as soon as he gets into office, would be, I don't think it's editorializing too much to say catastrophic for the Canadian economy. It would certainly be a big, big deal for the Alberta economy. I think 80% of our energy goes to the United States or something like that. So if there's a tariff on that, cause some huge problems here. If there were retaliatory tariffs, that would certainly increase costs for everyone in Alberta. So Smith is really, she's going down to those places. She's talking to the governors and saying, look, if there's a tariff on Alberta energy, this is a lot of the energy that supplies those Midwest refineries. There isn't an easy alternative for those Midwest refineries that are outfitted to handle Alberta heavy crude. And she's saying, look, your gasoline prices are going to go up. Your energy costs are going to go up if this tariff comes in. So she's really trying to, I think, convince people south of the border that as much as this would affect us negatively, it would also affect them negatively. And of course, those Midwestern states are electorally quite critical to Donald Trump. So that might be something that changes his mind a little bit. But anyways, she's doing her thing. The Prime Minister's doing his thing. I have no doubt that Doug Ford and Wab Kinew and whoever else are on the phone whenever they can or having lunch whenever they can. This is even if everyone's not marching in lockstep in a Team Canada approach, it's certainly a full court press response to this across the country.
What are your thoughts of Donald Trump trolling our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, calling Governor Trudeau of the 51st state of the United States?
Well, it did make me think a little bit of sort of at one point when there is an Alberta separatist movement, one of the options for the Alberta separatists was to say, well, maybe we should become the 51st state. So that strikes me as perhaps more likely than the entire country becoming the 51st state. So maybe it'll be Governor Danielle Smith in 5 years' time.
Tyler, the Alberta government has scrapped a planned trip to the United Arab Emirates that would have recruited foreign workers to come to our province to work. I guess this would have been a little bit awkward since governments are blaming the huge influx of immigrants on a wide range of problems we're having, including unemployment and lack of housing.
Yeah, it would have been, I think, a little bit incongruous. This trip seems to have been, the immigration minister, the provincial immigration minister would have been there. There would have been employers there seeking sort of specific workers for specific jobs and things like that. So, to some extent, you can see the logic in that. But it certainly would have been a little bit incongruous with where governments across the country are at the moment, including Alberta's government. Premier Daniel Smith has called, for example, for a return to sort of Harper era levels of immigration and targets and things like that. There's been a lot of, all the polling has shown a pretty significant sort of shift in the mood that Canadians have towards immigration in general. So I don't think it's a surprise at all that they canceled that trip. I think there would have certainly been some questions and perhaps a little bit of discontent among the UCP's supporters had that trip gone ahead. So probably some good politicking there from the government, I would imagine. Although there's probably some employers who are thinking, oh well, darn, we're not gonna have quite so good of access to some of the folks we needed to fill jobs.
Tyler, I was honored to sit on the media panel during a recent Lethbridge West by-election political forum. Now, the two frontrunners, the UCP's John Middleton Hope and the NDP's Rob Miyashiro, answered questions from both the media and the audience. Now, the by-election is coming up on December the 18th. But Tyler, still no date to help NDP leader Naheed Nenshi get a seat at the legislature. And when I chatted with him last week, he said, you know what, I'm not in any hurry.
Well, I think he's about the only one who's not in any hurry. I think pretty much everyone else wants to see him get a seat and see him in action at the legislature, to see how he does. For the folks in Lethbridge West, this has been a long time coming. Shannon Phillips, I believe, stepped down on Canada Day, so almost 6 months later, there's going to be a new representative for them. And I think people are paying attention to this to some extent. When they've been answering questions and talking about their platforms and policies, they've really been talking about the same issues that other Albertans in other parts of the province are thinking about as well: public safety, affordability, healthcare, education, all those kind of big bread and butter sort of issues. And I think the other reason people are looking at this closely, or maybe should be looking at it more closely, is because it's one of the first tests we're really going to have of the sort of Premier Danielle Smith versus Naheed Nenshi sort of lineup. And the reason for that is, there's been some polling data, I think, on the two leaders, but they haven't really been tested in a by-election or an actual election, obviously. And because the issues in Lethbridge West are the same ones that are being talked about elsewhere, it's perhaps a little bit more of a referendum on the two parties' leaders and how the government's doing, how Nenshi's doing, than it might have otherwise been in sort of a different time and a different by-election, perhaps.
Was really interesting last night, as well as how both candidates agreed on many topics such as no coal mining in the eastern slopes of the Canadian Rockies. They both agreed that was bad. Even though a recent referendum out of the Crow's Nest passed, most people want to see the coal mining to help with the jobs. And they both agreed no SCS, no permanent supervised consumption site here in Lethbridge, because we obviously know what happened there, but they both agreed that it was not a good thing. So it was interesting to see how many topics they actually agreed on as opposed to disagreed on. Tyler, 2 LGBTQ2+ groups and 5 children are suing the Alberta government, and it's directly related to the province's policies affecting transgender minors that received royal assent and became law, these policies. Parents groups applauded the move by Premier Daniel Smith, but others, as I just mentioned, are not very happy about it.
They are not. And this is only one of sort of the suite of, I think, about 3 bills that passed last week. But this is the one that affects, that bans puberty blockers and hormone therapy for minors under the age of 16, and that bans all top and bottom gender reassignment surgeries for anybody under the age of 18. That one got royal assent, I believe, last Thursday. So it is now law. Of course, the advocacy groups and parents and stuff, they were ready for this. They knew this was going to come. They didn't know when it was going to come, but they were pretty ready for it. I believe they notified the court on Friday they were going to be filing, and then they'd filed on Monday. And they basically asked for an injunction. So what that means is they say, look, this is going to be challenged in court. And the court is going to make a determination at some point on the constitutionality of this, but the court should block this from coming into effect until that constitutionality is decided. So that is, at this point, basically what they're asking for. They argue that it violates a bunch of charter rights for transgender minors. And as you mentioned, there are 5 young people, I think all around the ages of 10 and 11, who have joined the lawsuit. They are represented by their parents, as that sort of thing generally works. But it's not just advocacy groups. There are some folks who are directly affected by this who are involved in the lawsuit. Now, Premier Danielle Smith has been asked repeatedly if she thinks she's going to have to use the notwithstanding clause on this, which of course is something that happened in Saskatchewan on its, I believe it's pronoun law in schools, which Alberta also has, but as I mentioned, not law yet, hasn't received royal assent. And she says no. She says that the government has struck sort of the right balance. But of course, you don't want to say, yeah, we're going to use the notwithstanding clause because you're tacitly admitting at that point that what you've done is unconstitutional. So this is the opening salvo in what I think is going to be a lengthy court battle over this particular law and the other laws that are going to come into effect sometime later in 2025.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. He's our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent for the National Post, Tyler Dawson. Thanks again for joining us today from Edmonton.
Always a pleasure, Hal. Thanks for having me.